As Braz said, this book is a sequel to the one that Haynes and I wrote in 2008. As I started this book, I did have doubts, and as frankly did my publisher, about whether this campaign would produce a story that was going to be as compelling as the 2008 election. I mean, that election, as we all remember, was a historic election, and not only because we ended up electing the first African-American president in history in this country, but also for the epic struggle that he went through to win the Democratic nomination and the economic crisis that we went through, and also in a sense because of how people felt at the end of the election. I remember attending a focus group maybe a year and a half, 2 years after the election. It was run by Peter Hart, who was doing it for the Annenberg Center at the University of Pennsylvania. And he asked people, put yourself back to election night 2008 and tell me what you felt and what you thought. And this was a focus group of Republicans, Democrats, people who had supported Obama, people who had supported John McCain. And any number of the people who had supported John McCain said, I actually felt good after that election. And Peter said, why? And they said, I just felt good for the country. I felt that the country had done something important and significant. And even though I wanted John McCain to win, I felt that something important had happened. We knew that this campaign in 2012 was not going to be that. This was not an uplifting campaign by any stretch of the imagination. It was a totally different one, and it was in many ways a much more sprawling story than we had dealt with in 2008. It had a much bigger cast of characters and an unusual cast of characters, which we'll no doubt talk about tonight. It had a lot of plot twists and some bizarre moments. When the 2008 campaign ended, we interviewed President-elect Obama and said at the opening, before we get to other questions, before you became a politician, you were a writer. He had obviously written a wonderful book, Dreams from My Father. He's a very elegant writer. He said, how would you write the story of your own election? And he said, well, I think it was a novel, and I was not the most interesting character in it. And so he proceeded. So I was thinking, I was not able to interview the president after this election for this book, but I've been thinking, how would he answer that question about this election? I mean, there were times when it was a comic opera, obviously. There were times when it was as serious as we have seen, and moments of tension and anger. My colleague, David Marinas, said to me at one point during the campaign, during the early stage of the Republican race, he said, with all due respect to all of you good political writers, he said, we really need Hunter Thompson right now to be able to explain what's really going on. So this was what I was dealing with as we started out this 2-year cycle from the end of the 2010 midterms until the November election. And yet at the end of it, I thought that it produced a story that not only was as compelling as the other, but in some ways more important. And I say that because I think this campaign was much more of a window into where America has been, a divided America, and also where it may be going, and this struggle that we were in, and also that it is more instructive of this moment in American politics than the campaign was 4 years ago. In some ways, that campaign may have been a false dawn. We thought something might happen as a result of it, and it did not. And I think there were no illusions about this campaign all the way through it. And as a result, as I sat down to write this story, it was both more challenging and, in the end, in some ways, more satisfying to try to be able to unpack what had happened and repack it and tell it.